According to supply managers in the 9 Mid-America states, how is the economy performing?
Well, according to our survey, the Creighton survey of supply managers in manufacturing in the 9 states, the overall, the manufacturing economy is slowing down. The overall index was at 49.1, and that's below growth neutral 50.0. That's the last month it was 49.3. This is the second straight month of below growth neutral readings. This is the lowest we've seen since 2016, when we did have a marked slowdown in the regional economy. And if you look, I'm bringing up the chart, and you'll see that both the U.S. and the regional, our Mid-American economy, manufacturing economy, is slowing down, and that's a clear warning signal. Now, right now, I'd say it's pointing to slower growth. We're not in, I'd have to see it much lower to say a recession. Something in the low 40s, something below 42 would indicate, I think, pointing toward a real recession in the first half of 2020.
What negative impacts are labor shortages and trade issues having?
In terms of the survey of supply managers and manufacturing supply managers, both are significant. Labor shortages, that's the chief impediment to overall long-term economic growth in the region. That would be finding and hiring qualified workers. But the trade numbers are down significantly. We're talking about an export number that was 36.2. We're talking about imports at 43.4. Both of those are just a reaction to the trade war.
Describe the impact of tariffs.
Tariffs and the trade war are the most significant short-term factor slowing the overall regional economy. We asked the supply managers about how the impacts of the trade war, and 48% said it was having a negative impact on their business. We also asked about changing vendors. 18% of the supply managers said because of the trade war, because of the tariffs, because of the retaliation, that they were changing vendors, or they have changed vendors. So this is the significant factor right now, and until we see some easing up there, this is going to continue.
What were the hiring trends?
The hiring trends were not good. The overall index for hiring was below growth neutral, much like it was in August. And we're seeing pullbacks there. And some of that's because of just finding and hiring qualified workers, but also some of it, particularly in urban areas, is actually a pullback, a slowing down. Talking about ethanol, for example, an important industry in this part of the country, ethanol is definitely slowing down, and we're seeing some idle plants. We're seeing some plants actually shutting down.
What impact is inflation having?
Well, less and less. The overall inflation reading for the month was at 55.3. That's only slightly above growth neutral, and that's in a range indicating only modest inflationary pressures. That's down from August 63.4, when it was a bit higher and more of a concern. So what does this mean for the consumer out there? What does it mean for other businesses? It means inflation right now is not an issue, but I want to warn, that's right now. That could change dramatically, and of course it means the Federal Reserve can be a little more aggressive in terms of reducing interest rates. I expect the Federal Reserve to reduce interest rates at their October the 30th meeting.
What does the Mid-America economy need?
What we need most of all is passage is eliminating the trade war with China, reaching an agreement with China. That's certainly first, but tied for first is the passage of USMCA. That's NAFTA 2.0. Right now, Congress has to approve NAFTA, or I should say USMCA, and we're seeing it being held up in the House of Representatives. We need to be that passed by Congress and the Senate, sent on to the President. That's an immediate need. And we also need, strangely enough, oil prices to moderate a bit. Oil prices, keep an eye on oil prices. That, of course, affects inflation, but it also has some negative impacts on overall growth. It's still in a range that's acceptable, but it could move up quickly with the ongoing conflict with Iran.
What are some areas of risk that we need to monitor?
Areas of risk, of course, not passing USMCA, that's a significant risk. Secondly, failure to reach any sort of agreement with China, that's certainly a risk going forward. We're talking about this next Friday. The Bureau of Labor Statistics releases its job report for the month of September. Watch that jobs report, look at wages. As long as wage growth year over year is between 3 and 4%, that's good. Outside those boundaries, that's somewhat a problem. Above 4% inflationary, the Fed would have to go slower on their interest rate cuts. Below 3%, perhaps we're seeing much more softness than we expect in the overall U.S. economy. Look at the ISM reading, which comes out later on this morning. If it's below growth neutral, which I expect, that's an issue. It's much like Creighton's. Last month it was below growth neutral. This month, as ours, I expect it to be below growth neutral. Look at the Fed Open Market Committee. It's the interest rate committee that meets on October the 29th and 30th. On the 30th, they'll announce a rate cut. That's what I'm expecting. Look at the language surrounding that. If they indicate it's the last rate cut, then that's some good news in a sense. It's indicating that they see the economy is still okay growth there. If they say we've got to reduce rates even more, that's a concern. And finally, and this is a biggie, is the Brexit, the Great Britain exiting the EU, and that's on October the 31st. A big international event that would just pile on to the global concerns that we're seeing here. The global economy is already slowing down. This was, of course, would fortify that slowdown. That's a real big issue, and certainly a big issue for agriculture and manufacturing, and that's what this part of the nation depends heavily on. So that's something to really keep an eye on, and that's something I would put maybe first on the list for the next month.